Finally, at the Commonwealth Memorial Gates tonight near Buckingham Palace, a service was held just over an hour ago on the eve of the 80th anniversary of VJ Day, victory over Japan at the end of the Second World War. It was to mark the contribution of British and Commonwealth troops. This evening and tomorrow, thoughts will rightly turn to the cruelty inflicted on British soldiers as Japanese prisoners of war. It is hard to see any upside to what they went through, but some did manage to find a way to make use of their time there and to make a difference.
Japan has today surrendered.
Victory over the forces of Imperial Japan came only after a series of crushing defeats in which Great Britain lost the waypoints of its empire in the Far East to an immensely powerful Japanese war machine. In the midst of a desperate British attempt to slow the Japanese advance in what is now Malaysia was a young infantry officer called Peter Chemist Betty, who was decorated for the courage he showed in what was a fighting retreat.
He was typically amusing about the fact that it wasn't the bullets he was worried about, it was the fact that the Japanese coming out of the woods shrieked at the top of their voices. War cries. And apparently it was a really terrifying noise as they came out of the woods.
Peter was taken prisoner in Singapore in 1942, along with thousands of other Allied troops, and interned in the vast Changi prisoner of war camp. Richard has learnt in detail about how his dad responded to these conditions by reading the diaries he kept during his time in captivity, which describe the enormous vegetable gardens he was permitted to cultivate and the produce which saved the lives of many of his campmates.
He had planted, or talks of having just planted 45,000 sweet potato plants. That must have been incredibly satisfying to know that he was producing food that keeping people alive.
For 300 miles, the railway was driven straight across country.
Peter spent the rest of the war in Changi, which meant he escaped the fate of those prisoners who were sent north and worked to death on the railways Japan was building on the land it occupied in Thailand and what is now Myanmar. Decades later, at home in England, his son had a question about the type of car his father had chosen to buy.
I asked him, how come you have a... Sorry. Sorry.
No.
I said, how come you have a Japanese car? And he said, I have respect for the Japanese. He saw them, I think, as just like everyone else.
The war against Japan was riven with cruelty and suffering, hunger and disease. At the end of it all, this soldier survived and felt no bitterness. Geraint Vincent, News at 10.